Cesar Millan has become famous as the dog whisperer, the man who can tame the most untrainable dogs. But now he's being sued, accused of having a pit bull that bit humans and even killed Queen Latifah's dog.
This young woman says she was attacked by Cesar Millan's dog and bitten so badly she had to give up her dream of being an Olympic gymnast.
It pretty much ended my career.
The most important thing Cesar Millan was doing on the dog whisperer was happening right in front of everyone, and almost nobody noticed it. Owners had spent months struggling with dogs that barked, attacked, destroyed their homes, or refused to listen. Yet Cesar could walk into the same house and change the dog's behavior within minutes.
The lawsuit says Junior had a history of violence. In fact, it claims Junior mauled one of Queen Latifah's dogs to death. Mr. Millan covered up Junior's violence by instructing his staff to tell Queen Latifah and others that a car killed her dog.
So what was Cesar Millan doing that most fans never figured out? And why did it work when everything else had failed? Join us as we uncover the secret behind Cesar Millan's extraordinary control. The boy who understood dogs. Cesar Millan was just a skinny boy growing up on a small farm in Culiacan, Sinaloa. His family had no electricity or running water, and most of their energy went into getting through each day and preparing for the next harvest. Cesar spent much of his childhood around dogs and livestock, quietly watching how they moved, reacted, and communicated. The animals seemed to understand him, and he understood them in a way that surprised the people around him. His neighbors soon noticed this unusual connection, and while he was still young enough to carry buckets around the farm, they gave him a nickname that would follow him for years: El Perrero, the dog boy. The dogs on that farm were not pets. They were working animals. Nobody coddled them or handed out treats for sitting. Everything came down to pure energy, body language, and authority. That was the whole basis of the strategy. No textbooks, no fancy certifications, just dirt roads, pack mentality, and a stern grandfather who tolerated zero nonsense. That raw, self-taught approach eventually turned into a fortune, though it also gave critics plenty of ammunition down the line. At 21 years old, Cesar made a decision that changed everything. He crossed the United States border illegally, with $100 in his pocket and zero English. He reportedly spent 2 weeks trying to get across before paying a coyote his last $100 to make it into California finally. Once there, he was homeless. He slept under freeways in San Diego for months. He worked for cash wherever he could. The American dream, for Cesar Millan, started in a drainage ditch, but the dogs found him even there. He started walking dogs in San Diego, then in Los Angeles. Word spread fast. His first real break came when a client referred him to a dog grooming shop. Then he opened a small training operation called Pacific Point Canine Academy. And one of his very first clients happened to be actress Jada Pinkett Smith, who was so blown away by what she saw that she told him to learn English, helped him find a teacher, and encouraged him to put his work on television. Without Jada Pinkett Smith, there may never have been a dog whisperer. However, what most fans never realized was that the philosophical foundation of the entire dog whisperer empire was already under fire before the cameras even turned on. The theory that science called a lie. When The Dog Whisperer premiered on National Geographic back in September 2004, nobody expected it to blow up the way it did. Within a single year, the show landed a primetime slot and was broadcast across 80 different countries. The formula hit the exact same mark every single episode. A desperate dog owner calls for help with an aggressive animal that basically holds the whole house hostage. Cesar Millan walks through the front door, projects some calm energy, makes a couple of quick hand movements, and suddenly the absolute monster of a dog sits down quietly at his feet. It looked like a total miracle on screen. Cesar built his entire empire on dominance theory. The basic idea claimed that dogs act out because they believe they run the whole house. Fixed the problem by becoming the alpha, taking charge, and forcing the animal into a submissive follower role. Exercise comes first, discipline comes second, and affection gets handed out last. The logic sounded great on paper, and the television edits made the strategy look completely foolproof every single week. The big issue here is that actual science completely debunked the whole thing. Back in 2009, the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior issued official warnings against using dominance training. They pointed out that forcing a dog into submission damages the bond between the animal and the owner, while making bad behavior even worse in the long run. The entire alpha wolf concept came from a 1940s study on random wolves thrown together in cages. When researchers later studied wild wolf packs, they found something totally different. Wild wolves live in peaceful, cooperative family groups, not aggressive, violent hierarchies. The alpha wolf theory was wrong, and the guy who originally wrote the study spent decades trying to get people to stop reading it. That quick fix on television was not real training. Behavior experts pointed out that the animals were actually slipping into a state of learned helplessness. A dog going totally silent out of sheer terror is completely different from a dog feeling calm and relaxed. That difference mattered a lot to the family left holding the leash after the production crew packed up their camera gear and went home. However, Cesar was not scamming anyone. He genuinely believed in his own system. But the gap between television magic and real science kept getting wider with every new season. And the controversy over his methods was only the beginning of what Cesar was really dealing with behind the scenes. The dog who ran the show. If people understood one thing about the dog whisperer, it was this. Daddy was not just Cesar's dog. Daddy was Cesar's co-host, his right hand, his emotional anchor, and reportedly the reason some of the show's most dramatic rehabilitations actually worked. The brown and white American Pit Bull Terrier had originally belonged to rapper Redman, who had gotten the dog as a puppy, but whose touring schedule made real training impossible. A mutual connection brought Daddy to Cesar, and the dog never left. Daddy's temperament was extraordinary. He was calm with aggressive dogs, patient with fearful ones. He could walk into a tense situation, and within minutes, his energy would change the room. Cesar used him in training sessions constantly. Daddy reportedly also helped rehabilitate hundreds of dogs over a career that spanned more than a decade on television. He was, by any measure, the show's most important performer. In 2010, Daddy passed away at the age of 16. Cesar described the loss in terms that made it clear how deep their bond ran. He called Daddy his Buddha, his source of calmness, and the greatest teacher he ever had. For a man who had built an entire philosophy around projecting calm energy, losing the one friend who had always given him that calm was devastating in ways no one would ever fully understand. The timing turned out to be an absolute nightmare. The dog passed away in February 2010, and just a few weeks later, Cesar Millan filed for divorce after 16 years of marriage. The two met back when Cesar was still washing limousines for a living. And she was there from the absolute beginning as a business partner, emotional anchor, and the main person keeping his personal life afloat while the brand grew. Once she walked out, Cesar realized the empire he built was not actually set up the way he thought it was. The grief was compounding, and the worst was still to come. But what nobody watching the show suspected was that while Cesar was helping millions of families save their dogs, his own world was falling apart. The year the dog whisperer hit rock bottom. The year 2010 completely wiped out Cesar Millan. His famous dog died, his marriage fell apart, and the financial reality of the divorce hit like a freight train. In later interviews, Cesar admitted to losing $10 million through a series of terrible business decisions. The whole fortune vanished, and he ended up completely broke and had to start over from absolute zero. The financial loss was not even the worst part of the realization. Cesar Millan did not actually own the trademark rights to the title Dog Whisperer. The entire global brand, the very nickname that defined his entire identity, belonged to the production entities behind the scenes. Millan spent years assuming he built a shared media empire, only to discover the legal system saw things quite differently. 9 seasons of primetime television, millions of book sales, and global fame meant nothing when contracts dictated that someone else owned the name on the door. The combination of grief, financial destruction, and the sudden end of a 16-year marriage pushed Cesar Millan completely past the breaking point. By May 2010, the weight of everything became too heavy to carry. In a television interview years later, Millan admitted that he attempted to end his life by swallowing a massive quantity of pills. His 2 teenage sons were the ones who found him, leading to an emergency rush to a psychiatric facility. Even while lying in a hospital bed, the only thing the man repeatedly asked for was a trip back to the farm where his old dog was buried. The situation inside the psychiatric facility turned into one of the weirdest chapters of the whole story. Cesar later mentioned that the other patients instantly recognized him from television, and the patients refused to trust the actual staff psychologists, but they trusted him. So the medical staff ended up inviting Cesar directly into sessions just to get through to the patients. The dog whisperer, right in the middle of a massive personal crisis, somehow ended up acting like the alpha of a mental ward. The whole thing sounds like a cheap movie script, but Cesar stood by the story in public interviews. Just as Cesar was putting himself back together, a new wave of controversy was arriving that would threaten to undo everything the comeback was trying to build. The lawsuits and the allegations that followed. After Daddy died, Cesar introduced Junior, another pit bull meant to step up as the new sidekick. Junior showed up on all the spin-off shows like Cesar 911 and Leader of the Pack. But unlike the original dog, Junior ended up dragging the whole operation into major legal disasters. That mess dragged on for a full decade and left a permanent stain on the entire Dog Whisperer franchise. Replacing a beloved mascot with a lawsuit generating liability is definitely one way to keep a reality television brand in the news. Fast forward to 2021, and a lawsuit from a former elite gymnast named Lydia Mattis dropped an absolute bomb on the whole Dog Whisperer legacy. Mattis claimed that while visiting her mom at a building Cesar owned, his pit bull Junior was roaming around the hallway completely unleashed and unsupervised. Out of nowhere, the dog allegedly attacked her, tearing up her legs so badly that it permanently ended her athletic career. The details got even darker when the filing alleged Junior had a history of violence that Cesar tried to cover up, including an incident where the dog allegedly unalived Queen Latifah's pet. Cesar's legal team naturally fired back, flat out denying the allegations and claiming the whole suit was just a cash grab after Millan refused to pay an $850,000 payout demand. The same lawsuit included an allegation that became one of the most sensational elements of the entire case. Mattis claimed that one of the dogs Queen Latifah had brought to Cesar's Dog Psychology Center had been fatally attacked by Junior. And according to the lawsuit, Cesar allegedly directed staff to tell the singer and actress that the dog had been hit by a car, not attacked. Cesar denied the claims. Queen Latifah's camp made no public comment. But the story spread everywhere and raised questions about what really happened behind the gates of the facility that the show presented as a place of rehabilitation and healing. Then came the pig incident. Back in a 2016 episode of Cesar 911, a French bulldog named Simon appeared on the show because of a habit of attacking pet pigs. During a filmed training session, Simon broke loose, chased a live pig around, and bit a chunk out of its ear until it bled. The clip went viral online fast. Los Angeles County Animal Control launched an official animal cruelty investigation against the show. National Geographic Wild put out a statement saying the pig got medical care right away and suffered no long-term harm. Authorities eventually dropped the case with no charges filed. Still, the image of the world-famous animal savior being investigated for animal abuse was a PR disaster the network could not hide. And yet, even with all of this, the most surprising revelation was not about any lawsuit or investigation. It was about the show itself and what the cameras were never actually capturing. What happened to the dogs after filming? For years, people in veterinary clinics and dog training groups kept asking one obvious question. What actually happened to those dogs once the camera crew packed up and drove away? The TV show always captured the dramatic breakthrough moment on camera. The show never came back 6 months later to see if the fix actually stuck, or if the dog went right back to tearing up the living room couch. Turns out, television editing makes it remarkably easy to pretend a 10-minute quick fix lasts forever. Professional dog trainers and behavior scientists keep bringing up the exact same problem with the show. What happens on camera during a high-stress training session with a famous expert standing in the room is totally different from normal life. The real test happens a week later, when the dog is back in the same living room with the same clueless owners and the exact same problems. The quick submission Cesar got on camera happened in the moment, but whether those fixes actually lasted long-term was something a fast-paced reality TV show was never built to show people. Critics constantly highlight a massive issue called the suppression model. A dog under enough physical or psychological pressure stops acting out, not because the underlying problem actually got fixed, but because the animal learned to bottle everything up in that exact moment. Behavioral science shows that forcing an animal to suppress fear or aggression often backfires. Once that immediate pressure disappears, the untreated anxiety triggers a sudden, far more violent outburst down the line. Cesar always fought back against this entire narrative. In interviews, he repeatedly claimed critics just missed the point of what calm, assertive energy actually means. The guy swore the dogs genuinely got better and that plenty of families saw real, long-term results. Over time, the public messaging shifted a bit too. Recent interviews show a willingness to admit that positive reinforcement has a real place in training, acknowledging that the whole conversation around animal behavior has moved on. And none of that even touches the story of what Cesar himself has finally admitted about what the show was really costing him during those 9 seasons. The comeback and the confession. The Dog Whisperer finally wrapped up its original run back in September 2012, finishing off 9 full seasons and 176 episodes. The show aired across more than 80 different countries and turned Cesar Millan into one of the most famous faces in the history of reality television. Then, without a dramatic cancellation notice or a giant farewell special, the whole circus just ended. The next 10 years turned into a massive comeback tour. Cesar launched Cesar 911, Leader of the Pack, and Dog Nation. Then came Better Human, Better Dog on National Geographic in 2021, which ran new seasons all the way through 2025. A YouTube channel blew past 1 million subscribers. More books hit the shelves, and world tours filled up arenas. By every available metric, the guy who lost every single dollar in 2010 managed to rebuild the entire empire from scratch. The confession fans actually needed to hear did not happen all at once. It leaked out slowly over years of random interviews. Cesar eventually admitted in public conversations that pretending to be the top dog expert on Earth, while his private life completely fell apart, took a massive toll. The guy who spent years preaching to millions of people that calm, assertive energy solved every problem in life was secretly running on pure adrenaline and borrowed composure for several of those later seasons. Cesar also started talking much more openly about what it was really like being an undocumented immigrant who blew up into a global celebrity before finally getting citizenship in 2009. The massive identity pressure, the cultural expectations, and the way the show turned him into a hero for some groups while making him a target for others were a heavy load to carry behind closed doors. The corporate brand demanded total calm at all times. The actual person running the brand was living through complete chaos. Then there is the huge gap between what fans think they know about dominance theory and what Cesar slowly started walking back. In interviews later down the road, he began admitting that animal science moved on, that actual research matters, and that the quick fixes he made famous on TV were never supposed to be tried by regular people at home alone. He even admitted the show oversimplified things that should have been handled way more carefully. It is definitely not a full apology, but coming from the guy who built an entire fortune on that exact pseudoscience, it is a pretty massive admission. Was Cesar Millan the greatest dog trainer of his generation, or the most dangerous one? Was The Dog Whisperer a landmark show, or a piece of television that set dog training back decades? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.